Thank you guys so much for joining. Hold on one second while you guys come on in. All right. Welcome on in. I'll wait till you guys kind of file on in. And then I'm going to actually read you the allegations that essentially the state has against against Quadajah Johnson in the alleged killing of Romeca Blackman. And I think it's important to read this, and it also helps me be able to tell my story. It's a lot of sad information coming out of this. I mean, now that I've had time to sit back and actually read this, if you watched my live earlier, that live was okay, but these are actually concrete facts that I've had a chance to digest that I did not know prior to that live. So give me a second. Okay, so I'll start out with this document first, and we're gonna get to all of that. And I may not answer your questions because for the sake of timing, I do have to write something for the 4 o'clock show. But okay, so in this case, DMV, victim being Romeca, D being Johnson. So I'll just alternate the names. So Quadajah Johnson and Romeca Blackman each have a child with witness 1 in this case. All 3 parties got into a dispute near a school. Johnson threatened Blackman multiple times in front of witnesses. Johnson then retrieved a handgun, shot Blackman multiple times in front of witnesses. This is according to the Cook County, this was filed for the murder charge, the first degree murder charge. So again, Johnson threatened Blackman multiple times in front of witnesses. Johnson then retrieved a handgun, shot Blackman multiple times in front of witnesses, and then we know, sadly, Blackman died. Johnson murdered Blackman after Blackman had just dropped her child off at school. Johnson celebrated the murder immediately after. Johnson was undeterred by the presence of witnesses, public setting, broad light near a school, and near many children. Multiple civilian calls to 911 before and after the murder. It basically goes on to say that she deserves to be held behind bars because clearly she doesn't care about the harm, and based on the previous circumstance that happened, nothing would stop her is essentially what it says. Now this is what the court is alleging. Now this is a 3-page document of all of the facts from the court. So it says, witness 1 has a 6-month-old child in common with Johnson, as well as a 6-year-old child in common with Blackman, the victim. In December 2024, the defendant sought a stalking no contact order against the victim, alleging that the victim made verbal threats to the defendant through the defendant's family members. The defendant in this case, let's go back. So in December of 2024, the defendant sought a stalking no contact order against, so that means that Johnson sought that stalking no contact order against Romeca, alleging that Romeca made that verbal threats to her through Johnson's family members. Johnson did not allege that Blackman committed any acts of violence against her. The order of protection was granted in July of 2025, but was never served on the victim. I think I kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier. On September 8th of 2025, just before 8:30 in the morning, witness 1 drove his black Mercedes SUV from his home located on South State Street. So this is the father in all of this, to the location of 20 West Cermak. Johnson was seated in the front passenger seat, and the 6-month-old child was in the rear. So the child was present through all of this, Johnson's child, in the removable car seat of the Mercedes. The defendant was dressed in a black jacket, that being Johnson, with green leggings. The father double parked his Mercedes on Cermak 2 car lengths in front of Johnson's black Chevy Cruze. Johnson and the father of their child then removed their child from the Mercedes and walked towards Johnson's Chevy and loaded the child into Johnson's vehicle. At approximately the same time, the victim drove her white Kia sedan to a school located nearby. The victim was dressed in a light pink outfit. She dropped her 6-year-old son off at school and then drove to where Johnson's Chevy and the father of their child was parked on Cermak. Romeca double parked her Kia on Cermak behind the father's Mercedes and got out, while Johnson stood outside of her car. At this time, witness 2, who does not know any of the parties, so a witness on the street, drove past Romeca, Johnson, and the father, observing that Johnson and Romeca standing in the street arguing, but unable to hear exactly what was being said. This person observed the father standing in between the two ladies with his arms extended, and then observed the Johnson, she's D in this case, the defendant, Johnson away. So witness 2 observed the father push Johnson away from Romeca, while that doesn't make sense on that file. While Romeca, unarmed, stood stationary with her arms crossed across her chest. Minutes later, another witness on an eastbound bus that drove past saw this argument again between Johnson and Romeca. She observed, and bus video captured, Romeca and the father standing in the open driver's door area of Romeca's Kia. At this time, this witness was walking east on Cermak, approaching State Street. This witness got out the bus, walked across Cermak, and stood under the CTA green line stop near another witness. Those two witnesses also don't know any of the parties involved. They observed the father standing in between the two mothers, Johnson and Romeca. They observed Johnson walk towards the driver's door of the Kia, standing in the threshold of the driver's door with the father standing immediately outside of the driver's door. Johnson was standing on the sidewalk arguing with Romeca. Another witness observed the father strike Romeca by repeatedly swinging the driver's door of the Kia closed on her. Another witness called 911 reported that the father had struck Romeca multiple times with the car door. After her 911 call, Romeca entered her car. After her 911 call, she entered her car. But two witnesses then observed Johnson approach Romeca's car and heard Johnson making threats towards Romeca. Another witness walked closer to the incident at this time. That person observed Romeca exit the Kia, and when she did, observed the father approach Romeca from behind and place her in a chokehold with his right arm while striking her with his left. This is hard to listen to because this is some acts of domestic violence here as well. This witness observed Romeca unarmed with her hands in the air trying to break free from the father's grasp. A witness heard Johnson make threats to shoot Romeca and heard the father tell Romeca that Johnson had a gun. Johnson then went to her vehicle, was observed by another witness retrieving a handgun and then standing on the sidewalk. The victim was able to break free from the father's hold and took steps away from Johnson as observed by another witness. That witness observed Johnson put her handgun at Romeca, walked toward Romeca, and then fired multiple times at her with a pause between the first shot and the subsequent shots. This witness had just turned to walk away when he heard, this is another witness, a gunshot, a pause, followed by two more gunshots. He looked toward the direction of the gunshots and observed the defendant holding a black handgun in her right hand. Romeca was struck multiple times and collapsed. Another witness, two witnesses moved Romeca's body and moved her slightly west. I guess she must have fallen into traffic. That person then called 911 and reported that Johnson shot Romeca and observed the father and Johnson fist bump one another afterwards. Officers arrived and observed that Johnson was unresponsive, unarmed, and laying in a pool of blood. On scene and covered in blood, Johnson was also on the scene and had blood on her. So the father had blood on him, Johnson had blood on her. Romeca was transported to the hospital and pronounced dead shortly thereafter. Johnson was positively identified as the shooter. Johnson detained and admitted to the shooting. From her Chevy, officers recovered a loaded 9mm handgun. Evidence techs processed the scene, recovering 3 spent shell casings. Ballistic analysis revealed that all 3 of those spent shell casings were fired from Johnson's firearm recovered from the Chevy. This is crazy. Johnson refused medical attention, was transported to the police station where she claimed self-defense and acknowledged that this was the first time. Listen to this. Please, 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 please. If you don't hear nothing else I say, listen to this. This is insane. And this is why you don't get caught up. And why I made my statement earlier about not getting caught up in no mess. Does anybody know Carlos's last name? You guys keep putting that person in there. Who is Carlos in this case? You guys keep saying it. I want to repeat this last part. I just emailed, because you guys asked about Carlos. I just emailed to find out if he's been charged or will be facing charges. I'll have more to come on that. I want to read this last part again because it's very okay. Johnson refused medical attention, was transported to the police station where she claimed self-defense and acknowledged that this was the first time. So this is all fueled by what? If this is the first time she had ever seen black men in person. Johnson did have a valid FOID card and CCL at the time of the shooting. On background, she had had some other run-ins with the law. One run-in on record. Again, Johnson refused medical attention, was transported to the police station where she claimed self-defense and acknowledged this was the first time she had ever seen the victim in person. I don't know what you guys think about that, but I think that is the most awful thing I've ever heard. So you claim this person has threatened you through people. You've never seen them before in person. And why would you shoot them? Why would you feel emboldened enough to shoot them? That's troubling. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I feel like that's troubling. Very troubling. And I pray that my 3-year-old daughter understands how important it is to love yourself, to not get caught up with no guys that's gonna coerce you or influence your mind to do something stupid. And if you see signs of bullcrap, to get out of it. That's my prayer. And men too got to do better. That's horrible. What would be your basis of shooting and killing somebody you ain't never even seen before, and they didn't have a gun? I don't know. All right. I appreciate you guys tuning in. More to come on Fox 32 at 4. I will post the story. I'm about to listen to the sound. Yes, and I mentioned that if you want to go back and watch this later, I mentioned that order of protection at the top of this when I first started this. That is part of this. She said the order of protection was put in place. She ordered for it to be put in place December 2024 because Johnson alleges that Romeca threatened her through Johnson's family members. She never directly threatened her. Keep that in mind. Also went on to say she had never... This was the first time she saw her in person when she pulled the trigger. Just want to put that out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. More stories to come. And, you can formulate your opinions based on what this says. I just try to give the facts. And the facts remain that we need to instill more self-esteem and pride into our women in the world. And clearly there are some failures that went on here. I don't know what exactly. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist, but something went wrong here. And now 3 children that we know of, because I don't know if the father has more children, but we know Romeca has a son that is left behind. Johnson is currently pregnant and had a 6-month-old at the time of the shooting. 3 children are without moms. And possibly we don't know what's going to happen with dad. So this is just a failure all the way around. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll make sure to post my updates here throughout the day. Stay tuned. Take care. And I will save this live.
You know that feeling when you're scrolling through the news and something just stops you cold? Not because it's shocking the way we become numb to, but because it's so senseless, so avoidable, so heartbreakingly human that it forces you to sit with the weight of it. This is one of those stories. And I need to tell you right now, before we go any further, that what happened on a South Loop Street corner in Chicago on the morning of September 8th wasn't just a tragedy. It was a failure of choices, of relationships, of systems designed to protect people. 3 children lost their mothers that day in different ways, and the ripples of those losses are still spreading. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe in bearing witness to the moments that reveal something true about who we are and who we could be, then subscribe, because this channel doesn't look away from the difficult conversations. Let me take you back to that morning, September 8th, 2025. The sun was already up, the city moving through its routine, parents dropping kids at school, coffee cups in hand, that particular kind of morning chaos that feels both overwhelming and completely ordinary. Romeca Meeks, 31 years old, was doing exactly that. She had just dropped her 6-year-old son off at his South Loop school. Just a regular Tuesday morning. The kind of morning that's supposed to be forgettable, tucked into the rhythm of all the other mornings that came before and all the ones you expect to come after. But this morning would be different. This morning, Romeca wouldn't make it home. Now, before I go any further, I want you to understand something crucial about this case. It's not a mystery in the traditional sense. We know what happened. We know who was there. We have witnesses. We have evidence. We have a defendant who's been charged. What makes this story compelling? What makes it important isn't the question of what happened. It's why. It's how. It's the web of relationships and decisions and moments that led to a 31-year-old mother lying in a pool of blood on a street corner while her child's school was just yards away. It's about how love, or what people mistake for love, can become something so twisted that it ends in gunfire. And it's about how, even now, with all the facts laid out in court documents, there are still people telling different versions of the truth. Here's what we know for certain. Romeca Meeks shared a 6-year-old son with a man. Let's call him what he is in the court documents. Witness 1, the father. Now, this father also had another child, a 6-month-old baby, with a woman named Quadajah Johnson. So you have 2 women, both mothers of this man's children, their lives unavoidably intersected by this shared connection. And if you're thinking this sounds like a recipe for conflict, you're not wrong. But here's what's chilling. According to what came out in court, Holly Johnson and Romeca Meeks had never met in person before that morning. Never. They existed in each other's lives as ideas, as threats, as the woman on the other side of a man they both had ties to. They knew each other through stories, through messages passed along by family members, through a particular kind of paranoia that grows in the absence of direct contact. In December 2024, months before the shooting, Holly Johnson took out a stalking no-contact order against Romeca Meeks. Now, pause on that for a moment. Think about what that means. Johnson claimed that Romeca had made verbal threats against her, but not directly. These alleged threats came through Johnson's family members. And here's what Johnson did not claim. She did not claim that Romeca had committed any acts of violence against her. No physical confrontation. No direct threats. Just words filtered through other people. The order of protection was granted in July of 2025. But here's the thing, and this detail matters. It was never served on Romeca. She may not have even known it existed. So you have this legal document, this official acknowledgement of fear and conflict floating in the system, and the person it's supposed to protect against, she's going about her life. possibly unaware that she's been legally designated as a threat. Fast forward to September 8th. That morning started at a home on South State Street. The father was there. Holly Johnson was there. Their 6-month-old baby was there. Around 8:30 in the morning, the three of them got into the father's black Mercedes SUV. Johnson was in the front passenger seat. The baby was secured in a car seat in the back. They drove to 20 West Cermak, and this is where the geography of this tragedy starts to matter. The father double-parked his Mercedes on Cermak, just 2 car lengths in front of where Johnson's black Chevy Cruze was already parked. They got out, removed the baby from the Mercedes, and walked the child over to Johnson's Chevy, loading the baby into Johnson's vehicle. Normal co-parenting movements. A handoff, the kind of thing that happens thousands of times a day in cities everywhere. But at approximately the same time, Romeca was arriving at the school nearby. She was driving her white Kia sedan, dressed in a light pink outfit. She dropped her 6-year-old son off at school. And then, instead of driving away, instead of heading to work or home or wherever her day was supposed to take her, she drove to where Johnson's Chevy and the father were parked on Cermak. She double-parked her Kia behind the father's Mercedes, and she got out of her car. Now, we don't know what brought Romeca to that exact spot at that exact time. Was it planned? Was it coincidence? Did she know Johnson would be there? These are questions that matter, questions that speak to intention and state of mind, but they're questions we may never be able to answer definitively. What we do know is what happened next, because there were witnesses, multiple witnesses, people who didn't know any of the parties involved, who would just go about their own mornings and found themselves watching something unfold that they couldn't look away from. One witness was driving past and saw Johnson and Romeca standing in the street, arguing. This witness couldn't hear what was being said, but the body language was clear. Conflict. And here's the detail that starts to paint a picture. The witness observed the father standing between the 2 women with his arms extended. He was physically trying to separate them. The witness saw the father push Johnson away. Away from what? Away from Romeca, who, according to this witness, was standing stationary with her arms crossed over her chest. Unarmed, not advancing, just standing there. Minutes later, another witness on an eastbound bus drove past and saw the argument still going on. This witness and the bus's video camera captured Romeca and the father standing in the open driver's door area of Romeca's Kia. Think about that positioning. Romeca was at her own car, her space, her vehicle, and yet the conflict hadn't de-escalated. It had followed her. Another witness got off a bus, walked across Cermak, and stood under the CTA Green Line stop. From there, this person had a clear view. They saw the father standing between the 2 mothers. They saw Johnson walk toward the driver's door of the Kia, standing in the threshold of that open door, with the father positioned immediately outside. Johnson was on the sidewalk, arguing with Romeca, and then things escalated in a way that's difficult to even process. Another witness observed the father strike Romeca by repeatedly swinging the driver's door of the Kia closed on her. Read that again. The father, the man who shared a child with Romeca, the man who was supposed to have some fundamental responsibility to the mother of his son, he used her car door as a weapon. He swung it closed on her body, multiple times. Another witness was disturbed enough by what they were seeing that they called 911 and reported that the father had struck Romeca multiple times with the car door. So now we have emergency services being contacted, not after the shooting, but before, during the escalation, when there was still time for intervention. After that 911 call was made, Romeca entered her car. Maybe she was trying to leave. Maybe she was trying to create a barrier between herself and the violence that was already happening. But 2 witnesses then observed Johnson approach Romeca's car, and they heard something that would become crucial to understanding what happened next. They heard Johnson making threats toward Romeca, specific threats. Threats loud enough for strangers to hear over the noise of a city street. Another witness walked closer to the incident at this point, drawn by the commotion, maybe trying to help, maybe just trying to understand what they were seeing. And what this witness observed was Romeca exiting the Kia again. When she did, the witness saw the father approach Romeca from behind and place her in a chokehold with his right arm. while striking her with his left. Let me pause here because this is where the story shifts from an argument between two women to something much darker. This is domestic violence. This is a man physically assaulting the mother of his child in broad daylight on a public street. The witness observed Romeca unarmed, with her hands in the air, trying to break free from the father's grasp. She wasn't fighting back. She was trying to escape. And while this was happening, while Romeca was being held and struck by a man stronger than her, a witness heard Johnson make threats to shoot Romeca. Not vague threats, explicit threats. And the witness heard the father tell Romeca that Johnson had a gun. Think about what that means. The father, while physically restraining Romeca, while she's struggling to breathe, while she's trying to get away, tells her that the woman threatening to shoot her has a gun. Is that a warning? Is it a threat? Is it both? Johnson then went to her vehicle. Another witness saw her retrieve a handgun and then stand on the sidewalk with it. The victim, Romeca, was able to break free from the father's hold. She took steps away from Johnson. She was moving away from the threat. And then a witness observed Johnson point her handgun at Romeca, walk toward her, and fire multiple times, with a pause between the first shot and the subsequent shots. Let me slow down here, because this detail is crucial. A witness heard one gunshot, then a pause, then two more gunshots. That pause is everything. It's not a single panic reaction. It's not someone squeezing a trigger in a moment of terror, and then immediately realizing what they've done. It's a shot, a moment of process, a moment where Johnson could have stopped, could have lowered the weapon, could have let Romeca run, and then two more shots. Another witness had just turned to walk away, maybe unable to watch anymore, maybe try and get to safety. When they heard the first gunshot, they looked back toward the direction of the sound and saw Johnson holding a black handgun in her right hand. Romeca was struck multiple times. She collapsed. Two witnesses moved her body slightly west, maybe trying to get her out of the street, out of traffic, trying to do something, anything to help. One of those witnesses called 911 again and reported that Johnson shot Romeca. And then this witness observed something that has haunted everyone who's heard about this case. They observed the father and Johnson fists bump one another afterward. A fist bump. That gesture of celebration, of camaraderie, of a job well done. While Romeca was lying in a pool of blood, while she was dying, officers arrived and observed that Romeca was unresponsive, unarmed, and laying in that pool of blood. Johnson was still on the scene. She had blood on her. The father had blood on him too. Romeca was transported to the hospital and pronounced dead shortly after. She didn't survive long enough for her son to ever see his mother again. She didn't survive long enough to fight for herself in court, to tell her version of events, to defend her own name. Johnson was positively identified as the shooter by multiple witnesses. She was detained and admitted to the shooting. Officers searched her Chevy and recovered a loaded 9mm handgun. Evidence technicians processed the scene and recovered 3 spent shell casings. Ballistic analysis revealed that all 3 of those casings were fired from Johnson's firearm, the one recovered from her Chevy. So we have witnesses. We have physical evidence. We have an admission. But Johnson refused medical attention, was transported to a police station, and claimed self-defense. And here's where this story takes a turn that still leaves me with more questions and answers. Johnson acknowledged that September 8th was the first time she had ever seen Romeca Meeks in person. The first time. They had never met, never spoken directly, never had a confrontation before that morning. And yet, Johnson felt threatened enough, scared enough, justified enough in her fear to retrieve a gun and fire it 3 times at a woman she'd never even seen before that day. How does that happen? How do you become so convinced of someone's danger, someone's threat to you, that you're willing to kill them the first time you lay eyes on them? This is what the court is alleging, that Johnson murdered Romeca after Romeca had just dropped her child off at school. That Johnson celebrated the murder immediately after. That Johnson was undeterred by the presence of witnesses, by the public setting, by broad daylight, by the proximity to a school and to children. Multiple civilian calls to 911 were made before and after the murder. People tried to intervene. The system was alerted. And still Romeca died. Johnson did have a valid FOID card and a CCL, a concealed carry license at the time of the shooting. She was legally allowed to carry that gun. But legal ownership doesn't grant the legal right to use it. Self-defense has a very specific definition in the law. It requires an imminent threat. It requires proportional response. It requires that you reasonably believe your life is in danger. And here's what the evidence suggests. Romeca was unarmed. Romeca was trying to get away. Romeca was being physically restrained by the father when the threats to shoot her were being made. How does that meet the threshold for self-defense? Now, let's talk about what came out in court. On December 3rd, months after the shooting, Holly Johnson was finally charged with first-degree murder. The delay between September and December sparked outrage from Romeca's family, from her friends, from the community that watched this case unfold. They demanded justice. They demanded accountability. They demanded that the system treat Romeca's life as valuable, as worth protecting, even in death. And on December 4th, just one day after the charges were filed, Johnson appeared in court for the first time. New details emerged during that court appearance. Details that added layers to an already complex and heartbreaking story. One detail. Holly Johnson is 7 weeks pregnant. So she was pregnant at the time of her court appearance, which means she likely became pregnant sometime in October, just weeks after she shot and killed Romeca. Another detail. The police said she shot Romeca 3 times, which aligns with the ballistic evidence. But hearing it stated in court makes it real in a different way. 3 bullets. 3 separate decisions to pull a trigger. 3 separate moments where Johnson could have stopped. A journalist who observed the court proceedings shared the allegations that the state has against Johnson. These allegations paint a picture that's hard to reconcile with any version of self-defense. The court documents state that Johnson and Romeca each have a child with the same man, witness 1, the father, that all 3 parties got into a dispute near a school, that Johnson threatened Romeca multiple times in front of witnesses before retrieving a handgun and shooting Romeca multiple times, also in front of witnesses. The documents emphasize the brazenness of the act, the public setting, the broad daylight, the proximity to children, the multiple calls to 911. The documents argue that Johnson deserves to be held behind bars because she clearly doesn't care about the harm she causes, and based on circumstances, nothing would stop her from causing harm again. The documents go deeper into the timeline and the relationships. They note that witness 1, the father, has a 6-month-old child in common with Johnson and a 6-year-old child in common with Romeca. That in December 2024, Johnson sought a stalking no-contact order against Romeca, alleging verbal threats made through Johnson's family members. That Johnson did not allege any acts of violence. That the order was granted in July 2025, but was never served on Romeca. This means Romeca may have had no idea that Johnson viewed her as a threat serious enough to involve the courts. The documents detail the morning of September 8th with a precision that comes from multiple witness statements and physical evidence. The father drove his black Mercedes SUV from his home on South State Street to a location on Cermak. Johnson was in the passenger seat. Their 6-month-old child was in the back in a car seat. The baby was present through all of this. The baby witnessed whatever they're capable of witnessing at 6 months old. The baby was there when decisions were made that would alter the course of multiple lives. The father double-parked his Mercedes on Cermak, 2 car lengths in front of Johnson's black Chevy Cruze. Johnson was dressed in a black jacket with green leggings. The father and Johnson removed their child from the Mercedes and walked toward Johnson's Chevy, loading the child into Johnson's vehicle. At the same time, Romeca drove her white Kia sedan to the school nearby. She was dressed in a light pink outfit. She dropped her 6-year-old son off at school and then drove to where Johnson's Chevy and the father were parked. She double-parked her Kia behind the father's Mercedes and got out. Johnson stood outside her car, and the confrontation began. The court documents detail the witness statements. One witness drove past and saw Johnson and Romeca arguing in the street, unable to hear what was being said, but observing the father standing between them with his arms extended, pushing Johnson away. Another witness described Romeca as unarmed, standing stationary with her arms crossed over her chest. Minutes later, another witness on a bus drove past and saw the argument continuing. The bus video captured Romeca and the father standing in the open driver's door area of Romeca's Kia. Another witness got off a bus, walked across the street, and stood under the CTA green line stop. This witness and another person nearby observed the father standing between the two mothers. They saw Johnson walk toward the driver's door of the Kia, standing in the threshold with the father immediately outside. Johnson was on the sidewalk, arguing with Romeca. Then a witness observed the father strike Romeca by repeatedly swinging the driver's door closed on her. Another witness called 911 to report that the father had struck Romeca multiple times with the car door. After that 911 call, Romeca entered her car. But two witnesses then observed Johnson approach Romeca's car and heard Johnson making threats toward Romeca. Another witness walked closer to the incident and observed Romeca exit the Kia. When she did, this witness saw the father approach Romeca from behind and place her in a chokehold with his right arm while striking her with his left. The witness observed Romeca unarmed, with her hands in the air, trying to break free. A witness heard Johnson make threats to shoot Romeca and heard the father tell Romeca that Johnson had a gun. Johnson then went to her vehicle. A witness observed her retrieving a handgun and then standing on the sidewalk with it. Romeca was able to break free from the father's hold and took steps away from Johnson. But a witness observed Johnson point her handgun at Romeca, walk toward her, and fire multiple times with a pause between the first shot and the subsequent shots. One witness heard a gunshot, then a pause, then two more gunshots. They looked toward the sound and saw Johnson holding a black handgun in her right hand. Romeca was struck multiple times and collapsed. Two witnesses moved Romeca's body slightly, perhaps to get her out of traffic. One witness called 911 and reported that Johnson shot Romeca, and then that witness observed the father and Johnson fists bump one another afterward. Officers arrived to find Romeca unresponsive, unarmed, and lying in a pool of blood. Both Johnson and the father had blood on them. Romeca was transported to the hospital and pronounced dead shortly thereafter. Johnson was positively identified as the shooter. She was detained and admitted to the shooting. Officers recovered a loaded 9mm handgun from her Chevy. Evidence technicians recovered 3 spent shell casings from the scene. Ballistic analysis confirmed that all 3 casings were fired from Johnson's firearm. Johnson refused medical attention, was taken to police station, claimed self-defense, and acknowledged that this was the first time she had ever seen Romeca in person. Let that sink in for a moment. The first time. Johnson had built up an entire narrative about Romeca in her head, based on things she'd heard, things she'd imagined, threats she believed were real, but that came to her filtered through other people. And the first time she saw Romeca, the first time they were in the same physical space, she shot her 3 times. Johnson did have a valid FOID card and concealed carry license at the time of the shooting. She had legal permission to own and carry that gun. But she also had a history. One prior run-in with the law on record. We don't know the details of that prior incident, but it exists as context, as a data point in the story of who Holly Johnson is. Now, the journalist who observed the court proceedings had a reaction that I think a lot of people share. They said, "I don't know what you guys think about that, but I think that is the most awful thing I've ever heard. So you claim this person has threatened you through people. You've never seen them before in person. And why would you shoot them? Why would you feel emboldened enough to shoot them? That's troubling, very troubling. And it is troubling. It reveals something deeply broken, not just in this specific situation, but in how we navigate conflict, how we perceive threat, how we allow our fears, founded or unfounded, to justify violence." The journalist went on to say something that resonated with me. "I pray that my 3-year-old daughter understands how important it is to love yourself, to not get caught up with no guys that's going to coerce you or influence your mind to do something stupid. And if you see signs of bullcrap, to get out of it. That's my prayer. And men too got to do better. This is horrible. What would be your basis of shooting and killing somebody you ain't never even seen before? And they didn't have a gun. This isn't just about one case. It's about patterns. It's about how we raise children to value themselves enough that they don't get entangled in relationships that demand they compromise their morals, their safety, their very selves. The journalist continued, "We need to instill more self-esteem and pride into our women. And clearly there are some failures that went on here. I don't know what exactly. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. But something went wrong here. And now 3 children that we know of, because I don't know if the father has more children, but we know of 3. Romeca has a son that is left behind. Johnson is currently pregnant and had a 6-month-old at the time of this shooting. 3 children are without moms, and possibly, we don't know what's going to happen with dad. So this is just a failure all the way around. 3 children. Let's sit with that. Romeca's 6-year-old son will grow up without his mother. He'll have to navigate birthdays and school plays and graduations and all the milestones of life with an absence that can never be filled. He'll have to make sense of how his mother died, why she died, who made the decision to take her from him. Johnson's 6-month-old child will grow up a mother who's incarcerated, who's facing a murder charge, who may spend decades, if not life, in prison. That child won't have memories of being held, of bedtime stories, of the daily small moments that build a bond between mother and child. And the child Johnson is currently pregnant with, that baby will be born into a world where their mother is on trial for murder. That baby's first home might be a prison nursery, if such a thing is even available. That baby will never know a version of their mother that exists outside the context of this case. And then there's the father, the man at the center of all of this, the man who shares children with both women, the man who, according to witness statements, physically assaulted Romeca, held her in a chokehold, struck her, used her car door as a weapon, told her that Johnson had a gun while she was restrained and vulnerable, the man who, according to a witness, fist bumped Johnson after Romeca was shot. What happens to him? What responsibility does he bear? These are questions that the legal system will have to grapple with, but they're also moral questions. Questions about culpability and complicity and the role that bystanders play when they're not really bystanders at all. But the biggest shift in this case came outside the courtroom. For the first time since the shooting, the father of Romeca's child spoke publicly about what happened. In a recent video, he shared his perspective on the relationship dynamics, what led up to the confrontation, and how he claims events unfolded that morning. What he said has already sparked strong reactions online, and it may influence how the public views the case going forward. Because here's the thing, when you have multiple witnesses, physical evidence, and ballistic analysis all pointing in one direction, and then someone directly involved says, none of that happened the way they said it did, it creates a fracture, it creates doubt, or it creates confirmation that the person speaking is trying to rewrite history. In the video, the father was asked about his reaction to what came out in court, to the witness statements that described him as an aggressor, as someone who physically harmed Romeca. His response? When I heard it, I'm just looking. It was unbelievable. But I was there, and I know for a fact none of that happened. How they just explained it. But my truth will get out here. And I hope everybody understand that. That's really it. I can't even say too much right now, because it's just going to feel like I'm going against them. They're going against me. We're just going back and forth. But the truth is going to come out. None of that happened. That's what he said. None of the witness statements. None of the observations from people who had no stake in this conflict. No reason to lie. No connection to any of the parties involved. None of it happened the way they described. He was there, he says. He knows for a fact. But what is a fact in a situation like this? Is it what you remember? Is it what you're willing to admit? Is it what serves your interests? Or is it what multiple independent witnesses observed and reported, what physical evidence supports, what a sequence of 911 calls documented in real time? The father says his truth will get out, that he can't say too much right now because it'll feel like he's going against them, and they're going against him just back and forth. But here's what I'm struggling with. This isn't a he said, she said situation. Romeca can't say anything. Romeca is dead. She can't defend herself. She can't share her truth. She can't explain why she was at that location that morning, what she was feeling, what she feared, what she hoped. Her voice is permanently silenced. So when the father talks about his truth getting out, about waiting for the right time to share his version, it feels deeply unbalanced. One side of the story is gone forever. The next confirmed court date is set for December 23rd, just days before Christmas. This case has been in the headlines for months, and every week brings another development, another angle, another person weighing in on what they think happened and why. My question, and maybe yours too, is this: do you think more charges should be expected when the case returns to court on December 23rd? Because here's what we have so far. Holly Johnson is charged with first-degree murder. That's the most serious charge. But the father, the man who witnesses say physically assaulted Romeca, who held her while threats were being made, who allegedly fist-bumped Johnson after the shooting, he hasn't been charged with anything. At least not yet. Not publicly. And that raises questions about how the legal system evaluates complicity, about where the line is between being present at a crime and being accomplice to one, about what it means to aid and abet, to facilitate, to fail to intervene. If the father told Romeca that Johnson had a gun while he was holding Romeca in a chokehold while she was trying to escape, is that just a statement of fact? Or is it a threat? Is it a way of saying, you can't get away and what's about to happen is going to happen? These are the kinds of nuances that prosecutors have to consider, that defense attorneys will argue over, that a jury, if this goes to trial, will have to weigh. But beyond the legal questions, there are human ones. How does someone become the kind of person who fist bumps their partner after that partner has just shot someone? What does that gesture mean? Is it solidarity? Is it relief? Is it celebration? Is it a way of saying, we're in this together, we did this together, and we stand by what just happened? Or is it something else entirely? Something that makes sense in the moment of adrenaline and shock and the surreal reality of having just witnessed a death? I don't know. I don't think any of us watching from the outside can fully know. But I know what it looks like. I know what it suggests. And I think about the children again, because they're the ones who will carry this forward. They're the ones who will have to make sense of a senseless act. Romeca's son will grow up knowing that his mother was killed in front of witnesses on a street corner near his school. He'll grow up knowing that the man who was his father's child's mother did this. He'll grow up navigating a relationship with a father who was there when it happened, who witnesses say participated in the violence that preceded the shooting. How do you maintain a relationship with a parent under those circumstances? How do you trust them? How do you feel safe? And Johnson's children will grow up with a different but equally heavy burden. They'll grow up knowing their mother is incarcerated for murder. They'll grow up visiting her behind glass. If they visit at all, they'll grow up with the stigma, the questions, the judgment that comes with having a parent in prison. They'll grow up wondering what could have been different. What choices could have been made that would have led to a different outcome? They'll grow up in a world that knows their mother as a killer, and they'll have to reconcile that public identity with whatever private memories they have, if they have any at all. This case is still unfolding. New information could come out. The father's truth could be shared in a way that changes a narrative, though I'm skeptical about what could possibly justify or excuse what multiple witnesses observed and what physical evidence confirms. The trial, if it goes to trial, could reveal details we don't know yet, could give us a fuller picture of the relationships, the conflicts, the history that led to that morning. Or it could reinforce what we already know, that Holly Johnson, 7 weeks pregnant at her court appearance, a mother to a 6-month-old, armed with a legally owned 9mm handgun, made a decision to shoot Romeca Meeks 3 times on a public street in broad daylight near a school where children, including Romeca's own son, were present. And maybe that's the simplest version of the truth. Not the why, not the emotional justifications, not the tangled web of relationships and resentments and insecurities that led to this moment. Just the what? A woman is dead, another woman shot her, and multiple witnesses saw it happen. Everything else, all the context and backstory and competing narratives, is important for understanding, for assigning moral weight, for making sense of how human beings can fail each other so catastrophically. But at the end of the day, Romeca Meeks is dead. Her son doesn't have a mother, and 3 children are growing up in the wreckage of adult decisions. So where does this leave us? What do we do with a story like this? We can talk about it, and we should. We can demand accountability, and we should. We can push for a legal system that doesn't let people slip through the cracks just because the dynamics are complicated, and we absolutely should. But we also have to look at the deeper failures here. The failure of a man to navigate his relationships with integrity and respect. The failure of systems that issue protection orders that are never served, that don't prevent the very violence they're meant to guard against. The failure of a culture that allows people, especially women, to become so entangled in toxic dynamics that they lose sight of their own worth, their own boundaries, their own right to walk away. The journalist I quoted earlier said something that's been echoing in my mind. We need to instill more self-esteem and pride into our women. And yes, absolutely. But we also need to instill accountability into our men. We need to teach everyone, regardless of gender, that love doesn't look like possession, that jealousy isn't romantic, that conflict doesn't have to escalate to violence. We need to model and reward relationships that are healthy, that are built on mutual respect, that prioritize the well-being of children over the egos of adults. We need to create communities where someone sees a confrontation happening on a street corner and doesn't just call 911 and hope the system handles it, but intervenes directly, physically steps in to de-escalate, to protect, to prevent. Because here's what haunts me about this case. There were opportunities to stop it, multiple opportunities. When Johnson took out that stalking no-contact order, there was an opportunity to serve it, to make sure Romeca knew that Johnson viewed her as a threat, to maybe facilitate a mediated conversation, or at least create legal consequences if contact continued. When witnesses saw the argument escalating, when they saw the father physically assaulting Romeca, there was an opportunity to intervene more forcefully, to create a barrier between her and the danger. When someone called 911 to report the assault with the car door, there was an opportunity for police to arrive before the shooting happened, to separate the parties, to take the situation seriously enough to prevent it from becoming a homicide. But those opportunities weren't taken, or they weren't enough, or they arrived too late. And now Romeca is dead, and Holly Johnson is facing life in prison. And the father is out there telling anyone who will listen that none of what the witnesses say happened actually happened, even though all the evidence says otherwise. And 3 children are growing up without the mothers they deserve, without the stability they need, without the chance to be just kids who aren't defined by a tragedy they didn't cause and couldn't prevent. The court date on December 23rd will bring more information. Maybe it'll bring more charges. Maybe it'll bring clarity about the father's role, about whether the legal system believes he bears criminal responsibility for what happened. Maybe it'll just be a procedural step, a continuation, another date set further down the road while everyone waits for the wheels of justice to turn. But whatever happens in court, the deeper questions remain. How do we get here? How do we make sure we don't get here again? What are we teaching our children about love, about conflict, about the value of human life? Romeca Meeks was 31 years old. She had a 6-year-old son. She was going about her morning, dropping her kid at school the way millions of parents do every single day, and she never made it home. She became a statistic, a headline, a case number. But she was also a person, a mother, a daughter, someone's friend, someone who had dreams and fears and routines, and a life that mattered. And that life was taken by someone she'd never even met before that morning. Someone who built up a version of Romeca in her mind that was so threatening, so dangerous, that killing her felt justified. How do we even begin to understand that? How do we prevent that kind of distorted thinking from taking root and growing into violence? I don't have easy answers. I don't think anyone does. But I know that this case, as painful as it is to examine, as frustrating as it is to see the father try to rewrite the narrative, as heartbreaking as it is to think about those 3 children, this case matters. It matters because it reveals truths about how we fail each other. It matters because it forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about accountability and complicity, and the ways that systems meant to protect us often don't. It matters because Romeca's life mattered. And the only way to honor that now is to refuse to look away, to demand better, to learn whatever lessons this tragedy has to teach. So I'm asking you, what's your theory about what should happen next? What does this case reveal about the relationships we build, the choices we make, the systems we rely on? Do you think the father should face charges? Do you think Holly Johnson's claim of self-defense has any merit given the evidence? Do you think there's more to this story that we don't know yet, or is the truth exactly as stark and simple as it appears? One woman killed another woman over a man who wasn't worth either of their lives? Share your thoughts below. Let's talk about this Not in a way that exploits tragedy, but in a way that takes it seriously, that grapples with the complexity, that honors the people involved by refusing to reduce them to villains and victims and nothing more. This case stays with me. It's the kind of story that lodges in your chest and sits there heavy and unresolved, reminding you how fragile we all are, how quickly things can go wrong, how much damage we're capable of doing to each other when we lose sight of what matters. If it moved you too, if you think stories like this deserve to be told with care and attention and respect for everyone involved, then like this video and subscribe. Because there are too many Romecasts out there, too many lives cut short by violence that could have been prevented, too many children growing up in the aftermath of adult failures. And the least we can do, the very least, is bear witness, to remember, to demand better, to never let these stories fade into background noise. Justice must be served, yes, but beyond justice, we need change. We need growth. We need to become people who don't let it get to this point in the first place. That's the real work. That's what matters.